Welcome to a world where lawyers get complaints for being too good, where their choice of font is a legal offense, and their lunch order is grounds for a grievance. We're diving into 55 of the most unhinged and hilarious complaints ever made against legal professionals. These aren't just grievances, they're masterpieces of baffling logic and incredible pettiness. 1. Some clients aren't just hiring a lawyer, they're hiring an interior decorator. A man was deeply troubled by a piece of abstract art hanging in his lawyer's office. He filed a complaint stating the chaotic squiggles and aggressive colors were a clear window into the lawyer's unfocused and disorganized mind. He was utterly convinced the art was a subconscious warning that his legal strategy would be just as messy and nonsensical as the painting he was forced to stare at. 2. Ever judge a professional by their suit? One client took it to the next level. She filed a grievance because her lawyer wore excessively expensive Italian suits to every meeting. Her logic was that her legal fees were clearly just funding his lavish wardrobe. She wasn't questioning his legal skills, just his fashion choices, which she was convinced were a direct personal insult to her financial situation. She apparently expected him to argue her case in a potato sack. 3. A lawyer's hobbies became the centerpiece of a formal complaint. A client did some online sleuthing and discovered his mild-mannered corporate attorney was the lead singer for a local heavy metal band on weekends. He was horrified. The complaint stated that a person who screams about darkness and chaos into a microphone could not possibly possess the calm, rational, and judicious mindset required to handle a delicate contract dispute. His extracurricular passion was presented as definitive proof of a deeply unstable personality. 4. Lawyers often display family photos or diplomas in their offices. For one client, this was a massive problem. He complained that his attorney's desk was cluttered with pictures of his wife and kids, which he saw as a constant, smiling distraction. The complaint argued that these photos proved the lawyer's mind wasn't 100% focused on the case, but was instead wandering off to family dinners and soccer games. Do you think seeing personal items in a professional's office is unprofessional, or does it make them more human? 5. The social media age has spawned entirely new categories of insanity. A client complained that their lawyer refused to create a viral TikTok dance challenge related to their personal injury case. They were convinced that a trending video would generate public sympathy and somehow pressure the insurance company into a bigger settlement. The lawyer's professional duty to not turn a legal proceeding into a cringy internet meme was seen as a lack of commitment. 6. Forget legal strategy. Some clients are more concerned with vocal performance. One man filed a complaint because his lawyer's voice was too soothing. He argued that this calm, reassuring tone was a sign of weakness and that he needed a legal pit bull, not someone who sounded like they hosted a meditation podcast. The complaint detailed his disappointment that the lawyer never once raised his voice, believing the volume directly correlated with how hard he was fighting. This client was essentially paying for a legal professional but expecting a professional wrestling promo. 7. In the middle of a heated civil trial, a client saw his lawyer share a brief, polite nod with the opposing counsel in the hallway during a recess. This was viewed as an act of high treason. The client filed a complaint, stating his lawyer was clearly fraternizing with the enemy and must be part of a conspiracy to throw the case. He was utterly convinced they were secretly best friends, plotting his downfall over courthouse coffee. 8. A woman who happily accepted a settlement offer later filed a complaint because she was furious about one of the clauses she had agreed to. Her reason? Her lawyer didn't personally sit down and read the entire 40-page document aloud to her. She insisted it was his job to spoon-feed her every single word, as if he were tucking her in with a bedtime story titled The Thrilling Adventures of Clause 7B. Seriously, be honest. How many of you have ever read the full terms and conditions for anything? 9. A client proudly presented his lawyer with a secretly recorded conversation that would have blown his case wide open. There was just one problem. It was obtained illegally and was completely inadmissible in court. When the lawyer refused to use it, the client was livid. He filed a complaint for incompetence, arguing the lawyer was unwilling to do what it takes to win and was too caught up in minor ethical rules. What would you do if you had evidence that could win your case but you got it illegally? Let us know in the comments. 10. A man was arrested for a clear-cut DUI, complete with dashboard camera footage and a failed sobriety test. He hired a lawyer and had some very specific expectations. When the lawyer couldn't get the charges miraculously dropped, the client complained. His issue wasn't just the legal outcome. It was that the lawyer had failed to get him a formal, public apology from the police department for the emotional distress of the arrest. He genuinely expected to walk away a victim. 11. You'd think legal skill would be the top priority, but for one client, it was all about the operating system. He filed a complaint because his lawyer used a Windows PC instead of a Mac. The client argued that this demonstrated a lack of sophistication and forward thinking, and he was concerned this technological backwardness would negatively impact his case. He literally believed the brand of computer on his lawyer's desk was a direct reflection of his ability to practice law. 12. A lawyer, doing his ethical duty, gave his client a brutally honest assessment of their case, explaining they had a very low chance of winning. The client's response? A formal complaint for being too negative. They didn't want a realistic legal opinion. They wanted a motivational speaker. The complaint stated the lawyer's pessimistic attitude had crushed their fighting spirit, as if the lawyer's job was to provide blind encouragement rather than sound legal advice. 13. Lawyers need breaks too, a concept one client simply could not grasp. He was absolutely furious when his attorney took a pre-planned one-week family vacation. He complained that the lawyer had abandoned him in his time of need. The case had no pending deadlines, but the client insisted his legal matter was so critical that the lawyer should have canceled his trip, believing his personal retainer fee included ownership of the lawyer's entire calendar. When was the last time a customer made you feel like you weren't allowed to have a personal life? 14. In a bizarre twist on judging a book by its cover, a client filed a grievance centered entirely on her lawyer's briefcase. She claimed it looked worn out and cheap, and that this projected an image of poverty and incompetence to the entire courthouse. She was convinced the judge saw the scuffed leather and immediately thought less of her case. It wasn't about the arguments inside the briefcase, but the perceived quality of the bag itself. 15. Here's a complaint that reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of the entire legal system. A client, facing serious fraud charges, explicitly told his lawyer to just go bribe the judge. When the lawyer refused, explaining that it was a felony that would get them both thrown in prison, the client was outraged. He filed a complaint against the lawyer for being uncooperative and unwilling to explore creative solutions. 16. No good deed goes unpunished. As a gesture of goodwill, a law firm gave a client a small discount on their final invoice. The client's reaction wasn't gratitude, it was rage. They filed a complaint arguing that the very existence of a discount was proof they had been overcharged from the beginning. They demanded a full forensic audit of every billable minute, turning a kind gesture into an accusation of systemic fraud. 17. A client desperately wanted a dramatic, high-stakes courtroom battle. He dreamed of a Perry Mason moment, a public takedown of his opponent. Instead, his lawyer skillfully negotiated an incredibly favorable settlement behind the scenes, achieving all the client's goals without the risk and expense of a trial. The client complained he was robbed of his day in court and the satisfaction of a public victory. Which would you prefer? A quiet, guaranteed win, or the chance for a dramatic public fight? 18. Never underestimate the power of brand perception. A client saw his lawyer getting into a modest 10-year-old sedan after a meeting. He immediately lost all confidence and filed a complaint. His reasoning was that a truly successful and powerful lawyer would drive a luxury German car. He felt the lawyer's sensible vehicle choice was a public announcement that he wasn't a winner, and it was embarrassing him by association. 19. In an attempt to be personable, a lawyer ended a routine email update to his client with a simple smiley face emoji. This was a catastrophic mistake. The client filed a formal complaint for unprofessionalism, stating that legal correspondence is a solemn affair and has no place for childish pictograms. The lawyer's attempt to seem approachable was interpreted as a sign that he wasn't taking the million-dollar case seriously enough. 20. Prepare for the theater of the absurd. After losing a case, a client filed a complaint that his lawyer blinked too much during the trial. He was utterly convinced this was a nervous tic that signaled to the jury that his lawyer didn't believe in the case. He even claimed to have timed the blinks, arguing the frequency increased during cross-examination, proving his lawyer was visibly crumbling under pressure. 21. We all know doctors have famously bad handwriting, but one client weaponized this against his lawyer. After glancing at the lawyer's handwritten notes during a meeting, he became deeply concerned. He filed a complaint stating that the lawyer's incoherent scribbles were clearly the product of a chaotic and disorganized mind. He was utterly convinced that if the notes were a mess, the legal strategy must be a mess too. 22. After winning a contentious divorce case for her client, a lawyer received an unusual complaint. The client was furious that the lawyer hadn't managed to become best friends with the judge during the trial. She had a bizarre theory that if her lawyer had schmoozed more, maybe invited the judge out for coffee, she could have secured an even better settlement. The complaint wasn't about the legal victory. It was about the lawyer's failure to engage in what amounted to a flagrant violation of judicial ethics. 23. A lawyer's lunch break became a legal minefield when his client, a deeply committed vegan, saw him eating a turkey sandwich. He filed a formal grievance, claiming that by consuming a product of suffering, the lawyer showed a profound disrespect for his core values. The logic escalated quickly. This display of carnivorism proved the lawyer lacked the empathy needed for his case. The client wasn't questioning the lawyer's legal arguments, but his moral fiber, which was apparently determined by the contents of his lunch. 24. Someone had clearly been binging courtroom dramas. A client was furious that during the trial, his lawyer only objected a handful of times. He wasn't concerned with whether the objections were legally valid or strategically sound. He just wanted the drama. He complained that the lawyer wasn't fighting hard enough because he wasn't constantly leaping to his feet and shouting, "Objection, Your Honor," like he'd seen on TV, robbing him of his theatrical moment. 25. You've heard of a bad first impression, but this is a complaint based on scent. A client was deeply concerned that her law firm's office smelled too much like old books and paper. Instead of interpreting this as a sign of a long-established, experienced practice, she complained it projected an outdated and dusty image. She argued that a modern, aggressive firm should smell like espresso and success, not a library. 26. The devil is in the details, or in this case, the typography. A client demanded a portion of his legal fees back because the lawyer submitted a legal brief to the court using the Times New Roman font. The client, an amateur graphic designer, insisted the font was weak and uninspired, and that a more assertive modern font, like Helvetica Bold, would have subconsciously made their arguments more persuasive to the judge. The complaint was literally about font choice. 27. A lawyer, trying to provide a quick, convenient update on a minor scheduling issue, sent his client a text message. The response was a formal complaint for undignified communication. The client stated that a text was a frivolous and overly familiar medium for such a serious matter, and that all correspondence should be conducted via formal letters or, at the very least, a well-structured email. Are you a texter, an emailer, or a phone call person when it comes to important business? Let us know in the comments. Yar. 28. Proving that you truly cannot please everyone, a client complained that their lawyer's closing argument was too powerful. They claimed the attorney's passionate, emotional delivery made them look desperate and theatrical to the jury. After weeks of demanding the lawyer be more aggressive, the client reversed course at the final moment, arguing that the powerful performance was off-putting and that a more subdued, intellectual approach would have been classier. 29. Some clients believe their retainer fee buys them a lawyer's entire existence. A woman discovered through social media that her lawyer volunteered at a local animal shelter on Saturdays. She filed a complaint for misappropriation of mental resources, arguing that any free time the lawyer had should be spent thinking about her case, not cuddling stray cats. She felt his pro bono work for puppies was a direct theft of the brainpower she was paying for. 30. In a display of pure superstition, a man filed a complaint because his lawyer shared the same first name as the opposing counsel. He was absolutely convinced this was a terrible omen that would confuse the judge and create a subconscious camaraderie between the two lawyers, leaving him at a disadvantage. He demanded the lawyer either legally change his name for the duration of the trial or withdraw from the case entirely. 31. It wasn't the legal strategy, the billing, or the communication that set this client off. It was the pen. He filed a formal complaint alleging that his lawyer's incessant pen clicking during their meetings caused him extreme psychological distress. He claimed the rhythmic, unbearable symphony of clicks was a deliberate tactic to distract and confuse him, preventing him from thinking clearly about his case. He was convinced the pen was a weapon of mental warfare. 32. How do you complain about a stunning, swift victory? One client found a way. His lawyer, through a brilliant legal maneuver, got the entire case dismissed in its very early stages, saving the client tens of thousands of dollars and months of stress. The client was furious. He complained that he had paid for a real fight and felt cheated because the lawyer resolved the issue too quickly and efficiently. He was essentially demanding more drama for his dollar. 33. Proving that some people will judge anything, a woman filed a complaint against her lawyer for being too short. She claimed his lack of physical stature made him unimposing in the courtroom, and that the judge and jury wouldn't take him seriously. In her mind, a powerful legal argument was less important than the lawyer's ability to physically intimidate the opposition. She wasn't hiring a legal mind, she was apparently casting for a legal titan. 34. One of the most common complaints is about communication, but this one has a special twist. A client was outraged that his lawyer didn't answer a phone call at 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning. The client claimed he had a sudden, brilliant breakthrough in his case, and the lawyer's failure to be available 24/7 constituted gross negligence. Because, as we all know, justice never sleeps, and neither should your moderately paid legal counsel. 35. Legal battles are stressful, but one client took her expectations to a whole new level. She filed a grievance because her lawyer refused to act as her on-call therapist, declining to listen to her hour-long tearful rants about her personal life at 10 p.m. The lawyer politely suggested she seek professional counseling. Her complaint wasn't about the legal advice she received, but the profound lack of emotional hand-holding she felt she was entitled to. 36. A client's paranoia extended all the way to the parking lot. He saw his lawyer drive away from the office in a bright red sports car and immediately filed a complaint. He argued that the flashy, aggressive color of the car was a clear sign of a reckless personality and poor judgment, traits he did not want in the person handling his delicate financial litigation. He was convinced the car was a rolling Freudian slip, revealing the lawyer's inner wild child. 37. After losing a fairly straightforward property dispute, a client didn't blame the weak evidence or the unfavorable laws. Oh no. He filed a formal complaint alleging his lawyer had a cursed aura and used negative energy in the courtroom, which he believed psychically influenced the judge to rule against him. So, what's the wildest excuse you've ever used to avoid taking responsibility for something? Let us know in the comments. 38. A classic tale of baffling logic. A client spent a full hour on the phone with his lawyer, relentlessly grilling him with dozens of questions about his case. When the bill came, he was absolutely livid to see a charge for a 1-hour consultation call. He complained that he shouldn't be charged for a call he made. The fundamental concept that a lawyer's time and expertise are the actual product he was paying for was apparently a complete mystery. 39. Picture a deadly serious meeting discussing the fine points of a multi-million-dollar contract. Suddenly, the lawyer's phone, which he forgot to silence, erupts with a loud cartoon duck-quacking ringtone. The client was not amused. He complained that this infantile sound shattered the solemn atmosphere and was a grave insult to the seriousness of his financial situation, proving the lawyer was fundamentally immature. 40. Legal terminology can be confusing, but this complaint takes it to a new dimension. During the initial consultation, the lawyer explained the next step was the discovery process. The client's eyes lit up, imagining a thrilling, investigative adventure. When he found out that discovery mostly involved filing and responding to tedious paperwork requests, he was crushed. He complained the lawyer had grossly misled him about the exciting, cloak-and-dagger nature of his job. 41. A man in California filed a complaint against his lawyer for being too good at his job. The attorney secured him a massive settlement, far exceeding his expectations. The problem? The client was furious that the huge sum of money created new and unforeseen tax complications, and claimed the lawyer should have warned him about the burdens of becoming rich. Imagine being furious that your lawyer was simply too effective at making you wealthy. 42. Jury selection is a delicate process of legal strategy and psychology. Or, if you're this client, it's a casting call. He was furious with his lawyer's choices for the jury, complaining that he didn't pick people who looked smart enough. His complaint listed his own criteria, which included intelligent foreheads, kind eyes, and a complete lack of visible tattoos. He genuinely believed his lawyer's job was to assemble a jury of friendly-looking geniuses who would be predisposed to like him. 43. In the digital age, a lack of online presence can apparently be a fireable offense. A client complained that her lawyer had a minimal social media footprint with no active Twitter or Instagram account. She argued this was a sign of being out of touch and irrelevant in the modern world. She wasn't concerned about his legal record. She was concerned about his clout score, believing a lawyer's value was directly proportional to their number of followers. Is a professional social media presence important to you, or is it just noise? 44. It all came down to a handshake. A client based his entire opinion of his lawyer's abilities on their initial greeting. He complained that the lawyer's handshake was disturbingly gentle, comparing it to a limp fish. This, he argued, was undeniable proof that the lawyer lacked the killer instinct and aggression necessary to metaphorically crush the opposition in court. He had already lost the case in his mind, all because of a perceived lack of grip strength. 45. A client, sitting in the firm's waiting room, saw his lawyer emerge from an office with another client, laughing at a shared joke. This was seen as an act of ultimate betrayal. He filed a complaint for emotional infidelity, claiming the lawyer was clearly more invested in his other cases. He felt that his retainer should have purchased the lawyer's complete and undivided emotional and professional loyalty, and seeing him be pleasant to someone else was simply unacceptable. 46. You can't control the weather, but don't tell that to this client. After losing a case on a dreary, rainy day, he blamed his lawyer for not getting the trial postponed. His complaint theorized that the oppressive gloom of the weather had a negative psychological impact on the jury, making them more irritable and less sympathetic to his arguments. He was seriously arguing that his lawyer should have had the foresight to be a part-time meteorologist. 47. Email etiquette was the final straw for one particularly demanding client. He was deeply offended that his lawyer ended their correspondence with the standard sign-off, "Best regards." He complained this was cold, distant, and passionless. He insisted on a more inspiring closing, suggesting alternatives like "yours in the relentless pursuit of justice" or "onward to victory." He wasn't paying for legal services. He was paying for a revolutionary pen pal. 48. A client got a peek inside his lawyer's briefcase and was absolutely horrified by what he saw. Tucked beside the legal files was a half-finished crossword puzzle. He immediately filed a complaint for mental loafing. He argued that any downtime the lawyer had, even for a few minutes between meetings, should be spent solely contemplating the complexities of his case. The crossword puzzle was proof of a wandering mind, and he was not paying his lawyer to think about a 7-letter word for a Scandinavian capital. 49. A client did a deep dive into his lawyer's educational background and made a shocking discovery. The lawyer had graduated from a highly ranked, very reputable law school that was not Harvard or Yale. He filed a complaint claiming he was a victim of educational bait and switch. He believed he was paying for a brand name legal mind and felt cheated by receiving services from someone with a merely excellent degree. Honestly, how much does the prestige of a degree matter to you in the real world? 50. After an exhausting legal battle, the lawyer secured a massive win and sent a professional email to the client confirming the victory and outlining the next steps. The client was underwhelmed. He complained about the complete lack of fanfare, asking why there was no celebratory phone call, no virtual confetti, no champagne emoji. He felt that such a monumental victory deserved a Hollywood ending, and the lawyer's calm, business-like confirmation had robbed him of his glorious cinematic moment. 51. It wasn't the legal brief, it was the haircut. A lawyer trying to stay current got a modern, stylish haircut. His client, a conservative businessman, was appalled. He filed a complaint claiming the aggressively trendy hairstyle was a sign of a frivolous and flighty personality. He argued that a man who would make such a fleeting, fashionable choice with his own hair couldn't possibly be trusted to develop a stable, long-term legal strategy. His trust in legal acumen was shattered by a fade. 52. A lawyer, explaining document security, mentioned that all case files were backed up on the cloud. The client, who was not technologically savvy, took this literally. He filed a panicked complaint that his confidential information was just floating in the sky somewhere, vulnerable to being struck by lightning or snatched by a passing airplane. He demanded the lawyer immediately retrieve his data from the atmosphere and store it in a physical, preferably fireproof filing cabinet where it belonged. 53. After months of intense negotiation, a lawyer finally secured an incredible settlement for his client. He printed the final agreement and presented it with a sense of triumph. The client's reaction? Disgust. He filed a complaint because the victory was printed on standard, flimsy copy paper. He argued that a win of this magnitude deserved to be commemorated on premium, heavy stock paper with a high cotton content, claiming the cheap paper diminished the gravitas of his hard-won victory. 54. Legal dramas on TV have a lot to answer for, and this complaint is proof. A client was deeply dissatisfied because his lawyer's office didn't look like something from the show Suits. He complained that there was no panoramic city view, no fully stocked crystal whiskey decanter, and the legal library looked a little dusty. The final straw? The Keurig machine only had basic coffee pods, not the artisanal, single-origin espresso he felt his case deserved. 55. A lawyer won a case using a brilliant, unexpected legal argument based on an obscure precedent. The client, instead of celebrating, was furious. He filed a complaint that the lawyer had won the case the wrong way. For months, the client had been pushing his own, legally baseless theory, and he was livid that the lawyer didn't use it. The complaint wasn't that they lost, it was that the lawyer had stolen his thunder and won without validating his own delusional genius. So, from cursed auras to the criminal offense of using the wrong font, we've seen that for some clients, the actual practice of law is just a minor inconvenience on the road to a truly spectacular complaint. It proves that sometimes, The most challenging battle isn't in the courtroom. It's in the client consultation room. We're curious to know two things from you. First, how often do you use a lawyer's services? And more importantly, which complaint from this list do you think was the absolute dumbest? Let us know your pick in the comments below. If these tales of legal lunacy made you laugh, or just thankful for your own sanity, do us a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more journeys into the heart of absurdity. Thanks for watching.